Okay, great. So now that we've got this set up, let's go ahead and try doing a bake. So the first thing we want to do is make sure our high res is visible. You can ignore this kind of blackness that we're seeing around our mesh. That's just what we call Z fighting. So it's just faces sitting on top of each other and the display having trouble deciding which of those faces to show. So we want to make sure we're in this UV editing panel up the top here. And from there, in this UV view here, we can just drag out this kind of little options here. And from here, we can see Text Tools. So Text Tools was one of the plugins we installed much earlier. And when we click that, we can see we get a bunch of options. The one we really care about to start with is this baking drop down. So from here, you'll see that we already have tangent normal selected, which is what we want, but it says we need a high and a low res version. So all we have to do is select all of our meshes. So just shift selecting here, just got all of them. And as soon as we hover over the panel here again, we can see that it actually populates what we were hoping to see. So it has each one of the meshes with a low res and a high res denoted here. So we'll keep the size at 512 while we're playing around here, just so it runs quickly, and we'll see what we get. So let's go ahead. Before we do that, we want to make sure we click this single texture checkbox here. Otherwise, it will just show the last one. It actually goes ahead and processes. So great. So we got this result. The problem here is that we have some of these bluey colors, these kind of greeny blue colors and these yellow colors here. We don't want to see that. So the way we kind of play around with that is by manipulating these two options here with the ray distance and the cage extrusion. So the ray distance is the most common one to edit straight away. So the ray distance is how far from the high res to the low res actual array of light is projected to determine any changes. So we're just going to actually bump this up just to see how it goes. So we'll just put it at a kind of low value now first. Okay, cool. So what we might try is putting in some cage extrusion. Great, so that got rid of a lot of those yellowy colors, but we still have some of these greens. So we could go ahead and play around with these two values for a long time until we get the result we want, which is going to be more akin to these purples and these pinks and some of these blues. But instead of that, we're going to leverage what's called a cage, and a cage is going to actually be more precise and allow us to tweak just the ray distance. So the way we're going to do that is we're actually going to hide this high res now. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to duplicate this low res. Just like we duplicated before, just right click and duplicate collection. I'm going to change this from low to cage. I'm going to change each one of its names from low to cage as well. Great, so now that that's done, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the wireframe mode, and I'm going to go ahead and start using a different modifier. So again, back to the modifier stack. What I'm going to do is I'm going to leverage the displace modifier. So that's this one right here. As soon as I click that, you'll see that it actually expands a lot. So that much more than we actually want. So we want to actually bring back our values here. So in this case, we're bringing back our mid-level. And we want to make sure there's a fair amount of distance between the two, but not an exorbitant amount. So probably 0.9 is too much. Let's do 9.5. Actually, we can go a bit higher. Let's do 9.8. There we go. That's probably fine. All right, cool. So now that we've done that, what we're going to do is going to do the same thing for each one of these. So again, I'm just going to go in here, add the displace modifier, and we already have a value we liked, 0.98. So I'm just going to punch that in, make sure it's working. Good. So the key thing is that this mesh needs to sit outside of the original mesh. So let's go ahead and keep doing it. Cool. And what we'll do is we'll just make sure that all of these are working fine. And that should be it. One thing we do want to do, as before, is to apply these modifiers. Otherwise, we'll have issues with them not working. Great. And now that that's done, we're going to show our high res again. And this time, we're going to select everything, including our cage. And what we're going to do is we're going to see now, as well as the low and the high, we now have this cage representation here. And all we should do now is we'll put our cage extrusion back to 0. We'll keep our ray distance about there, and we'll try baking now. Great, that looks really good. That's exactly the sort of thing we're looking for. So that cage has helped us a lot. So from here, I'm pretty confident I can go ahead and bump up the size here. So I'm going to put it at 2K and try baking again. So it will just take a minute now that we have a higher resolution. There we are, beautiful. That's looking good. That should do the trick. So from here, 2K is probably about good for most things, but you can go ahead and add an anti-aliasing here. Obviously we have 2 or 4. Probably 2 is fine for most things. It will add to the render time, but it will be worth it. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that. It will take a minute. Okay, so from here, we want to go ahead and save our new normal map so we can use it inside of software like Quixel Mixer. So to do that, all we have to do is go up to Image, Save As, and in our Sunclock folder, what we're going to actually do is just call it something simple. I might just call it normal, and I'm going to leave the compression at 0, 8-bit color depth, and RGB is fine, and I'll leave it as a ping, and click Save As.